Hey guys, welcome to A Matter of Life and Dev. In this YouTube series we'll talk about the release notes of Mendix, talk about new functionalities, breaking changes and some improvements they've made in the new release. Hopefully you find these changes and these videos useful and hope you enjoy.
Yep.
One of the big changes in Mendix 8 is the change from PhoneGap to React Native.
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, sure. As long as I've been working with Mendix, I think the same goes for you. First we worked with responsive mobile apps, and then we saw a shift to indeed PhoneGap.
Yeah. So what is PhoneGap?
What is PhoneGap? Well, PhoneGap is basically a wrapper for your web app, so you can have access to your device's functionalities. So, for example, your camera, your agenda, location services, stuff like that.
And that sounds pretty cool. Why did we need React Native?
Well, why do you want React Native? That's a good question. What I think is that PhoneGap is a bit limited.
Okay.
So what PhoneGap does is it builds a app specifically for iOS and one for Android, and behind the scenes it's the same app. Whereas React Native, you build an app specifically for Android and for iOS. Well, on the back end it's the same app, but it gets made specifically get built for the Android and iOS version. So that means you're closer to the actual device properties, I would say.
Okay. That sounds like a useful improvement.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a lot of potential in React Native.
Have you built an app already? A native app?
No, I haven't yet. We dabbled around with it a bit, but my knowledge of React isn't as good as I want it to be.
Okay.
It's basically non-existent. But that's one of the things that I see a lot now is that knowing React is kind of a must if you want to build a React Native app. It's in the name, I would say, React Native.
Yeah, fair enough.
What we're used to with Mendix, I think, is it's easy to build an app.
Yeah.
But I think with React Native, there's a new layer, and there's a division between developers for default Mendix apps or React Native. I think if you want to build a React Native app, you need to have some React knowledge.
If you build a native app right now, you need to keep in mind that you use native styling. It's completely different. It's more limited, I would say.
Yeah.
So you can't use everything you're used to, I think. But there's a whole lot of documentation on the Mendix documentation site. So I would advise to read that documentation.
Can't wait to see what people will start building with this.
Yeah, I need to up my React knowledge.
Same, yeah. I think that's the next how-to video we might make. How to react.
How to React. What more is new?
JavaScript Actions is a big one, I think, huh?
That's pretty huge.
Yeah, we've been able to play around with it for a while in the betas.
Yeah.
Well, what was your impression?
It's great that you can build your own JavaScript actions like we built Java actions. For example, one thing I always found lacking in nanoflows was a progress bar.
Yep.
And with JavaScript actions, builds a progress bar and it works.
Super easy, right?
Yeah. It's the built-in code editor is great. It is autocomplete. We are starting to implement JavaScript actions like bam, it's complete. It's there. This is the way you should build features in your platform, I would say.
Yeah. I also think it can be quite challenging for developers because we're used to low code, right?
Yeah.
We're not generally people who code.
No. No. It's coding. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's scripting.
So for your project, what might that mean?
It requires you to have some knowledge about JavaScript. I would say the people that built widgets before, they have that knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's you don't have to use JavaScript actions.
That's right.
For stuff you would build a widget for, you can possibly build a JavaScript action now. It's the same language.
Yep.
But it requires you to have some technical people in your team if you frequent JavaScript actions.
Exactly. Yeah.
The positive thing about JavaScript actions is that they're reusable. So you build them, you can put them out there like Java Actions, and make them reusable for your project team, for your company, even for the community.
So in nanoflows, we have to say, because in microflows you can't use JavaScript Actions, obviously.
Correct. Yeah.
It basically works the same as Java Actions would work in a microflow.
Yeah. Just drag them in there. And another big, in my opinion, big change is the use of sub-nanoflows.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Big missing point in your opinion as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think, well, it might go the same for you. First time I started to create a nanoflow, the first thing that I wanted to do was make a get or create function, which isn't possible. We couldn't create sub-nanoflows yet.
Yeah, you couldn't make them reusable.
Exactly. And with that introduction, I think it's so much better for your app, for the maintainability of your application. You can create JavaScript functions now, so you can start to structure your application just the way that we're used to with microflows. It's a big miss, and I'm super grateful to have that functionality now.
Yeah, I agree.
AI Assist?
Yeah, that's a pretty fun feature, right?
Yeah. It's a big introduction.
When did they start talking about AI Assist? That was a while back, right?
Yeah, somewhere in the Mendix 7 version.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it was, wow, we're now introducing AI Assist in the web modeler, so Mendix Studio.
Yeah.
And with Mendix 8 they released it to Studio Pro, so it's for everybody to use.
Yeah.
So what do we think?
Well, I got the chance to take part in a test session at Mendix. They asked us to extend an application, build some microflows, but try and use as much AI Assist as possible, just to see if it would work in our way of working, right? Because we're pretty used to working a certain way. Like I like to type when I filter my toolbox, for example, and just use the shortcuts whenever possible. So that was quite a change. I wasn't used to clicking the blue dot on the microflow line and look for the right action in the list. Sometimes the right action wasn't in the list. Makes sense. AI Assist is still learning. It's a first release and it keeps getting better. I hope.
I hope so too. Yeah.
But it took some time getting used to the way AI Assist recommends me stuff. So, for example, I had to create an object and use that object as a return value. Well, I was like, okay, I want to create an object, and it took some time. It'll get better by time, but it needs to improve the recommendations, I think, to be really helpful in my way of working. It
might be that it's for less experienced developers.
Yeah,
it might be very beneficial.
Yeah.
We were talking about it earlier about pair programming.
Yeah.
I think AI Assist might be the perfect pair programmer in that sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it has the potential to be that. As of now, it's useful when you're building new microflows.
Yeah, and I think AI Assist will be on its best when it can help you better build microflows. So not only build a microflow, but build a microflow, improve a microflow.
Yeah.
Like
optimize
microflow performance-wise or whatever. Like it should take more context into account to give us helpful tips. But that's future talk, right?
Yeah. Well, who knows? It might. I think that's what they're heading towards.
Yeah.
It's a very visionary thing, I think.
I agree.
Having AI help you build an application. I think in low code, it's an excellent move.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what it will bring. Yeah.
The next one was a bit weird for me. Mendix named it Enhanced Error Messages.
All right.
That sounds pretty mysterious.
There's a new thing in the changes bar in Studio Pro where it has an extra column that says error code. Sometimes it's clickable, sometimes it isn't. And when it's clickable, it will take you to a documentation page where it has that exact error code, and you can basically read the solution to the error.
Like in the manual of your microwave.
Yeah, exactly. If it starts blinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big a good improvement, I would say.
But are all the errors documented? Because that sounds like a lot of work.
I think it's near impossible because there will always be new functionalities, new error codes. So that's a tedious thing to keep up.
Yeah.
But also document all the already
all the
existing
errors.
I mean, that's got to be a hell of a job. I don't think Mendix will actually do it, so it might be up to the community, I think.
So I think it would be very helpful if we, for example, if there's an error which doesn't have a clickable link, and you want to create a forum post for on it, for example, that you use that error code in a tag, so the error code becomes searchable on the forums. Because well, I think we all had that you once run into an error, and there's a solution, there's a forum post about it, but you just can't find it.
Yeah.
And you have to, it takes you an hour to find the correct question, or and you come to find out there's no actual answer to it.
Yeah.
So
phrase things differently, and then
just another, not exactly the same problem.
Yeah.
So I think it will be that would be really helpful. I think use the tags or use the error codes in the tag, so it becomes searchable.
SVN.
Subversion.
Subversion, tortoise, resolve conflicts.
Yeah. Technical stuff.
Technical stuff, indeed.
Yeah. So what's new?
Yeah, what's new? Well, it might be good to talk about what SVN is.
Yeah, so Subversion is the repository we use with Mendix. So it's your team server is based on Subversion. And that contains like every commit with its messages, every branch, every conflict, it's basically it's a look in your it's your data bin. Yeah. Basically. And Tortoise is like a shell around Subversion which you can use to resolve conflicts, browse the repository itself, look where the branches are and where changes are made and where merges are made. So it's a pretty big part of Mendix. Yeah. It's like that's where your project resides. Previously we used 1.7 of Subversion.
Yeah, it's a pretty old one, isn't it?
Which was a pretty old one.
Yeah.
And with Mendix 8 they upgraded to SVN 1.9.
Yeah. Which brings us, I think I read some stability improvements, performance improvements.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
There are some things to keep in mind though, because the upgrade means that your working copy, like your project, is upgraded to the new SVN version.
Yeah.
And Tortoise only works with a specific type of SVN version.
Yeah.
So if you can't run both versions on the same machine side by side.
Yeah.
So you need
Tortoise.
With Tortoise.
Yeah.
So you need to have a separate tool, for example, to use Mendix 8 version control things, like Smart SVN.
Smart SVN, yeah, that's what they told us in the documentation what we could use.
Yeah.
And if you're like us, you have both apps in Mendix 7 and Mendix 8. That means either Tortoise should work for 1.7 and 1.9, and another SVN tool for the other one.
Yeah, yeah, that's basically that's the gist of it. Work with SVN if you know what you're doing, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back to the Studio Pro itself. There's a new thing called Design Properties.
Yeah.
Which could make it easier to maintain styling on certain elements.
Yeah, I think especially for developers with less knowledge of CSS or SAS, the design properties might help with styling an application without using inline styling, which is a thing I see.
Always good.
Yeah, well, I see inline styling being used quite often, myself included.
Shame.
Yeah, shame. I agree. But the design properties might help with that. We've played around with it for a bit. We'll show you. And what it basically does is in the properties of, let's say, a button or a layout grid or whatever, you can define your own design properties now. So you could make one that says, I want to have the text centered in, or the text aligned to the left or to the right. And you can create either an enum or a boolean with classes attached to it that you want that you could put on elements in your application.
So you can extend your properties window in Studio Pro with your own.
Yeah.
How do I create properties?
There's a file in your theme folder. I think it's called settings.json. And what you can do in there, what I suggest that you do if you want to use this, is open it, look at what's already in there, because it's already packed with a bunch
right,
of
so it's not an
properties.
empty file.
No, it's not empty. And just copy and replace certain parts that you want to use.
Play around with it a bit.
Play around with it. It's super easy. The design mode, we know it from Studio, from the web modeler.
Yeah.
Also introduced first there.
Yeah.
Now it's it was already available in Mendix 7.
Yeah, it's improved, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
in what way?
normally you're in structure mode,
Mm-hmm.
which was called edit mode at first. And in structure mode, you can build your application like we're used to, right? So data crates, buttons, whatever, build your application. However, with design mode, you can view your application as the user would see it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make any changes, like you can't place a data grid in design mode,
Okay.
but you can change design properties, if I'm not mistaken.
So you can design in design mode.
That sounds mind blown, right? And it does a good job in trying to mimic what your application would look like.
Mm-hmm.
However,
We opened up one of our applications, right?
yeah, it like not all, for example, widgets. Widgets have can have a placeholder image, but not all widgets have these images. So it's just like a gray bar on your screen where the widget is placed, and you don't know how big it would look or what it does, or depending how custom made your application is, design mode can or will not work that well for you.
Yeah.
To be honest, with the fast rerun option we have nowadays, I still find it easier to just press run and go to the page I was looking for. One other thing is, like, design mode doesn't take visibility into account. So if you have a very big form, which is conditional visible because some status parameter,
Yeah.
design mode doesn't know about your status at that time. So it just shows everything. And if you run it in the browser, then you'll go through your application process and just look at the screen as the user would see it. So there are some things you just keep running it and looking at your screen in the browser, opposed to working with design mode, I would say.
Yeah. But again, for people with less experience on how to CSS and stuff, this could be
very helpful.
very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in Mendix 8 and you have an existing project, you need to do some upgrading, which is I remember from 5 to 6 or 6 to 7 can be quite a tedious process.
Yeah, it also depends on how big your project is, of course, but it's never to be underestimated, I would say.
Yeah. It's not the first time that we heard a upgrade gone wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if we want to move from 7 to 8, what are things that we recommend? Obviously, create a branch first. I mean, that's basic upgrading.
Mendix 101.
Mendix 101, exactly.
First of all, I think you have to take note of the breaking changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's different compared to your previous version and the version you're going to upgrade to? For example, float and currency attribute types have been deprecated for a long time.
Yep.
And in Mendix 8, they're now removed.
Exactly.
Certain modules still use the float data type.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they will break.
Yeah. So either the module needs an update or you need to update it yourself.
Yeah. Now, there are some handy tools Mendix gave us. So you can, in this case, you can right click and convert all float data types to decimal.
Okay. Yeah. So
but still, just one of those things you need to take into account.
Yeah. New deprecations, aside from old deprecations being removed, it's now
new things have been deprecated in the client API, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Just one thing I can name is mx.ui is deprecated in favor of mx.data.
Mm-hmm.
So now deprecated means you can still use them, but they will be removed in a future version.
Exactly.
So it's better just to use the new type, the new replacement, basically.
Okay. So nothing to be worried about just yet.
But keep it in mind if you want to upgrade to the next big thing when it comes.
Exactly.
Because that could be the moment it can be removed.
Yeah, it's a good sense to upgrade applications.
Now, one big thing that has changed in Mendix 8 is the DOM structure, the way widgets are rendered in the page.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big thing when moving from 7 to 8, if I recall, right?
Yeah. If you also saw the release video Mendix put out, they also mentioned this change, saying us it would be easier to style widgets, to make it more in line with the rest of your application. I think we should see this as something that can potentially help us in the future, will make our life more easier, but when upgrading from 7 to 8,
requires some extra work.
it requires some extra work.
Okay, fair enough.
That's how I read the documentation and the info that's been provided to us.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that the thing you should take away from upgrading is take note of the changes of the newer version compared to the old one.
Yep.
Create a branch.
Yep.
Do a test run. Test your application after it's been upgraded. Is the behavior the same?
That brings us to the next topic. Also part of upgrading from 7 to 8, Java is also updated.
Java 11, right?
Java 11. If you have custom Java actions, be sure to test them when upgrading. I mean, it's also common sense, maybe, but there should be backwards compatibility with the old Java version that we're used to in Mendix 7. So it's not necessary that your functionalities will break. But what it also brings, that Java 11 obviously has new libraries that weren't available in the old Java version that we were using in Mendix 7, that we can use in Mendix 8. So
okay.
I don't have any specifics, but it sounds like an improvement. I mean, more libraries, not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. And
like
support, longer support.
Longer support.
Cool.
Yeah, good improvement. So,
the verdict.
The verdict, yeah, we've come to the end of reading through the documentation and pointing out the biggest changes and improvements and impediments and stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you think in general?
It's a great step, I would say. It has a lot of potential. There are some pieces that have been moved in place which have the possibility to be huge if they continue to develop these things. Pluggable widgets, which we didn't mention in this video, but it's a new way of creating widgets. They need some improvement, but could be huge.
Yep.
React Native, for example.
Exactly. AI Assist.
AI Assist.
Yep.
But I think, to be honest, it depends on your project whether or not I would build a project in Mendix 8 right now.
Yeah, true. Depends on if you want to use React Native. If that's a thing for you, then obviously go for 8.
Yeah.
If you want to build
JavaScript Actions.
JavaScript Actions, yeah. So if you see those kinds of requirements, it might be a good idea to use 8.
Yeah.
For me, I think I would also definitely recommend using Mendix 8. It like you said, it has so much potential. Yeah, basically what you said, it's a setup for a great major version of Mendix.
Yeah.
I think in a month's time when 8.1 has been released, and we get a good feel for how Mendix 8 is working, if it's stable as it now seems to be.
Yeah.
I think it's smooth sailing.
Yeah, I agree. I can't wait for what the future will hold.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah. So there are some things we thought were worth mentioning, and that includes that apps made in Mendix Studio 8 cannot be deployed to Cloud v3, so only to v4. The Java actions no longer add underscore parameter x to your parameters in your Java. Studio Pro can only be run on 64-bit computers, so 32-bit is no longer supported. Session removal is now logged at the debug level instead of the info level. Bootstrap JavaScript files are no longer included in the project, and support for Windows Phone and iOS version 9 to 11 are no longer supported.
So thanks for watching. We hope you liked our new YouTube series, A Matter of Life and Dev. Be sure to subscribe. Share this with anybody you think might benefit from our gibberish talk.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about this video, or do we can we improve anything about these videos? Please let us know in the comments. Send us an email, whatever.
Yep.
We hope you enjoyed this video, because if it's up to us, there's more to come.
True that. See you next month.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.